we've got so many things, juggling so many things. I feel like a clown at a circus spinning plates, and yet we continue to build. And so something else that we're building is because it's very common in entrepreneurship. You see this a lot in the School of Hard Knocks. Shout out to James Doomlin. If you're ever watching this, I'd love to have you on the show. When he interviews the most successful people in the world randomly on the street, there is one literal common thing between all successful entrepreneurs. What is it?
Belief in God.
Belief in God. Belief in something bigger than yourself. Because, dude, this is really fucking hard.
What's up, man?
What's up, dude? Happy Monday.
Happy Monday.
We had packed weekends, but yours was like particularly packed. You like
Mine was very packed.
Smash
I had
family
2 days
weekend.
of dance, 2 days of dance competition, Friday and Saturday, and my kid's first Holy Communion was Sunday. So that it was both my son and my daughter at the same
Beautiful.
time. But yeah, the dance competition was, if you've ever been to a little girls dance competition, you'll know that it is a wild experience. My daughter won the big trophy, and so
Literally
that was
twice her height.
twice her height, 6 years old. So if I was thinking this the other day, like, she's thinking like, this is the best feeling I've ever felt in my life. And I'm sort of like, the next best feeling is watching your daughter win the trophy. So
Amen,
like,
dude.
that's what's
Wow.
waiting for you. So I was like she worked really hard. She was amazing. I was like nervous for her, especially for her solo, because she was going out there alone on the stage, and I couldn't, I was like, she was nervous, but she crushed it. And you would never have known from her actual performance. But that's it. You use the nerves, you use the adrenaline to push your way forward. And I was super proud. And then, yeah.
That's the superpower. When you're 6 years old, that anxiety, you don't realize how to embrace that. That's a superpower, dude. Like one day that anxiety will turn into the craziest adrenaline, all in blackout mode. That shit happens to me.
Yeah.
Or I get on stage and then I black out. I ask you after the presentation, was it any good? I was like, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's a harness. It's like the harness of all that. It's so amazing to watch. It's wild.
The true
Really
out of
wild.
body experience. It's so interesting because my son is kind of the opposite. Even for communion, he was nervous even just like going up to the altar. Like he really doesn't like the whole world looking at him.
And nothing really to do. You just got to kind of be present.
Right. And so it's an interesting thing because I have one child that like very naturally like takes my coaching and kind of was able to just kind of go forward, whereas my son there's a little bit more. It's so interesting because every child is different, so they all need different things from you, and you got to figure out some of their experience, like just like their brain, their chemical makeup does not match yours, so you're like trying to give the right advice. And like where my daughter like was just, okay, I get it, and like just went, where my son was like, no, I'm still nervous, I don't like. We still had to took more coaxing, but it was very, very interesting.
Yeah, it's like such a pleasure to watch from an outsider's perspective. I held these babies on day one.
Yeah.
It's such a pleasure to watch what they're accomplishing, what their interests are. And like, we're just behind you with my little kids. And it like, I'm not at the age of first dance recital, but like, man, I have a little bit of a playbook and have such anticipation of what it's going to be like when we get there. But it's like it's from the sidelines, like me and Tara watching those videos around dinner last night. I like forgot that you sent them to me, and Tara was like, I want to see them. And we just got choked up watching them because like, here's this little baby. She's not a little baby anymore. Neither kid is a little baby. And it's like, where the hell happened with all this time? How is she so capable? And it's just it's foreshadow. I'm like sitting there with my little baby. She's like learning how to eat and chew and swallow, the fundamentals of existence. And here's another little baby that existed just a short period of time ago. It wasn't even here. And now she's won the dance competition, dude. That's different. It was so special to watch.
Old videos. We looked at the videos when she started, and she's just kind of like with these silks, like, and she was 3 years old, I want to say, when she started. And I don't know where the time went, like 3 to 6, like she looked so much older and bigger. And like, I remember the very first recital she had to do. And I'm just like, when you look back, it feels like, wait, where the heck did that happen? And someone explained it to me like this: when you're in it, time goes slow. But when you look backwards, it's fast. So you just try and enjoy being in it. And You know, this actually brings up such a great point because my wife, we were talking about kind of this journey you and I went on, the entrepreneur's journey. And sometimes I wrestle with, did I do the right thing by going all in on my own business? One of the things that I get is I get to be home with my kids every day. And when my son was born, I was commuting to the city. So I had, basically 3 hours on trains a day, had to show up to the office every day. I feel like you miss a lot. You're not home for a lot of stuff. And so you're doing that commute. And I've often looked at, the job postings call out to you. You see, I live close to New York City. So I see those Anthropic job postings and stuff. And it's like, and I saw one for forward deployed engineer. It's a great example, right? It was like, they were looking for like a forward deployed engineering head or something, 300 grand a year, 40% of your time was going to be spent traveling. And I thought to myself, I don't make anywhere near that as an entrepreneur today. And I definitely live with a lot more stress of like earning business. And you and I live with that, right? But I'd miss so much. I was like, imagine that. I could take you to the best resort that Disney World has to offer. And I could be all in. I'll never have to open my computer once. I'll take time off. I'll put in the time. And for 2 weeks, I'll be all in at the most expensive resort, Swan and Dolphin, the Grand Floridian, whatever you want at Disney. But the whole rest of the year, I'm working. 40% of the time, I'm on planes. I'm not in home. And there is wealth. So the thing is, I would be trading time, which I cannot get back, for money, which in reality, I could come up with some app tomorrow that makes me $10 million. Like money can happen in a snap. But when you trade time for money, you can't get it back. So when I look at things like that, I have to remind myself, I have to almost slow it down and really remind myself that what I am getting by the ability to work remotely, I do gain some, you definitely gain a ton of stress as an entrepreneur. There's definitely financial stress. There's definitely trade-offs we got to make that other people who work at big tech companies don't have to make. The golden handcuffs are real and they are fucking golden. So like it's pretty nice to be like, well, I don't have to worry. I could drive the nice car. I could do this. I could do that. But I'm like, when something breaks in my home, sometimes I got to roll up my sleeves and fix it. When we go on vacation, we have to go to my daughter's dance competition. We booked Virginia Beach. And we found an Airbnb. It's not the fancy, it's not right next to the spot where it needs to be. It's not, we're going to drive down. I'm not going to fly down, things like that. Where you make choices financially, but I have to recognize I make those choices because I get all this time home and I get to build the business, my own little utopia, as Derek Sivers says, for myself here.
What I find interesting is that same affirmation that you go through today is what we went through when we were looking for the courage to go all in. And I traveled in 2019. I traveled over 200 days a year. I had no family. I didn't have a little family. I had a house that I was justifying paying a mortgage on, but I was the only person living there. When I was gone, it was completely empty. And I went from 200 days a year traveling to completely nuclear. And we haven't traveled since. And not only do I feel like I got that out of my system, but it also gave me great contrast. If I'm here, nuclear, with a small family, the sacrifice of what that would be, exactly what you're talking about, it would be unsustainable for me. I'd be pursuing nothing but salary. And so to me, that just wasn't enough of the equation. I'd rather be broke as an entrepreneur with what I have from family and experience and availability and try to build a million different things in a million different directions than laser focused on a job. And that's just me. And that's from what I experienced. That's not coming from ignorance. That's coming from put the time in, 15-year career, thousands of days traveling over a 15-year career. I mean, from day one, my job was to travel to meet my customers. That was my whole freaking goal. That was the whole job. Be on the road, see your customers in the boardroom, save that customer, increase that customer, etc. And so the perspective is pretty incredible. What it also gives me great perspective is we have tried 1,000 different things. We wage war on the word failure because I have never failed at anything in my life. Doesn't mean that these things didn't see the light of day. Doesn't mean that they don't exist. Doesn't mean that they make money. Failure is a very interesting topic, but until it's over, it's just data. And so you and I continue to just be bullish about collecting data. And one day, one of the things that we are really working on is just going to explode. And I don't know what that's going to be. But today's a very interesting day for me because I'm kind of emotionally split. You know, we both had really nice family weekends, but in the background, my grandmother is passing away from late stage Alzheimer's. And I see the toll. It's been a decade of decline. It's not just like that happens overnight. It's a really tough way to go in the entire family experience. And, you know, I'm watching the impact of my extended family and my parents. And, you know, that's a big one. On the same day as we record this today is the 5-year anniversary of my friend Brandon Lang. He's my best friend, childhood friend. He passed away from a fentanyl overdose 5 years ago today. And so that's catastrophic, immediate, gone. And so, you know, today's a tough day for me as you kind of take stock of all the things that you're trying to put out into the world about how available we have made ourselves for our families. The contrast between like that emotional state. And what I find very interesting about entrepreneurship is you also have the opportunity, I guess it is, the opportunity to hold space in these types of moments. Because what would it be? I would have commuted to a job on a train today, or I'd be commuting to an airport to go fly to a customer today in my old life. You'd have barely a second to really even think, let alone embrace what your situation is. And here I am, I can hold space for myself, I can make content and put it into the world and maybe even help somebody else through their moment. And you and I have the opportunity to speak our goals and our passions and our hopes and dreams into reality. And so it's just this constant emotional juxtaposition of being an entrepreneur, like the highest of highs, things that are just unbelievable that we could have never would have been attracted to us, to the hardest things that we have to tackle in our lives. And so what I find really interesting is you and I continue to forge forward. We've got so many things, juggling so many things. I feel like a clown at a circus spinning plates, and yet we continue to build. And so something else that we're building is because it's very common in entrepreneurship. You see this a lot in the School of Hard Knocks. Shout out to James Dumoulin. If you're ever watching this, I'd love to have you on the show. When he interviews the most successful people in the world randomly on the street, there is one literal common thing between all successful entrepreneurs. What is it?
Belief in God.
Belief in God. Belief in something bigger than yourself. Because, dude, this is really fucking hard. And so if you're just all about me, and even if you're all about we, but you're not all about him, you're missing something. And so you and I don't know why we were selected for this. I don't know if it was self-selection or if something divine, but like same time, same place, same day, you and I had this idea, why would we not build an application to help us reconcile with faith, with our religions? And you and I have different religions, and it all kind of stems from the same core or root belief system. But we're builders, and we use the skills that we have and the curiosity that we have, and we continue to build. And so let's maybe transition this episode a little bit into some of what we are creating and what the goal of it is and why it helps us to kind of reconcile this extreme juxtaposition of emotion. And we both have wild stuff happening on both sides of the spectrum in our personal lives and in our businesses. And this shit is not easy. And there's only one way to get through it that I have found. Every other way hurts. Every other way.
Well, I think the entrepreneur's, should I say, journey is somewhat the ultimate test of faith, right? Because you have to be optimistic when there are no signs that you should be optimistic at all. And I think sometimes faith in God can feel the same way for people. When there's things challenging that, to believe that there's something more to this, to effectively be optimistic, I would say, is very challenging. And I think that it's uniquely entrepreneurial. And I think it's no surprise that everybody on the School of Hard Knocks, when he asked that question universally, I don't think there's been one person that said no, not one, because there are these moments when, and this has happened in my life before I was an entrepreneur. So I always had a belief, but maybe not what I would say is maybe not a traditional religious belief, but I felt like there was always sort of a belief in something more, because things would happen and that optimism would show through, that And I don't want to say that it's optimism. I don't want to say it's only when good things happen, because that's really important to keep in mind. And I'm learning this now as I'm on like a more proper journey with myself, my own children, that it's, you're not only, it's not about being blessed. Like a lot of people say, I'm blessed when only good things happen. But you're blessed always. You're not alone in the bad things. And like there have been times I want to, let's just take it to something as simple as like rock climbing, scary situations. And you're thinking, I am not in control here. How am I going to get out of this spot? Like I'm in a little bit I'm in trouble. And you somehow, something, and I say some, if it's weather, when you're in a weather scenario, which I've been in before too, it sometimes feels truly divine. Like I've been on mountains, literally hair standing up like this from like a thunderstorm that just happened out of nowhere. And you're like, oh my God, I'm about to get struck by lightning. And then like that doesn't happen and you make it off. And like through just absolute luck. I can think of one specific scenario. It feels a lot like luck, but I remember being on the Flatirons with Chris Johnson actually. And we had finally gotten to the top, and boom, just you start to see the storm brewing. And we have to get to the rappel, and so you have to actually like make your way over this jagged edge to these wrap rings. And I'm like, listen, we gotta unrope. I was like, because we're not gonna make it. We gotta climb. We just gotta climb. So we're going and going and going and going, and just soloing at this point, and we get to the freaking chains, and thank God, dude, it's literally like, dude, fully hair standing, like his hair. I'm looking at him, and I'm like, dude, this is freaking scary. And someone was there with the rope already, and was like, use my rope and get down. And I was like, holy shit, dude, holy shit, we made it, dude, we made it. Like I remember that moment, and then again another scenario with him. We were in like a complete whiteout storm in Vale, coming down, and I'm talking, I stuck my hands out, couldn't see in front of me. Couldn't see, and we had, I don't know where this thing came from, out of nowhere. And there was an avalanche on the front side that day, actually killed somebody, and we made it off on the freaking same run. And I don't, like I said, sometimes it's just moments, right? But I'll take it back to today, why I kind of came to where we are, why my kid's first communion. You have children, and when things are happening like what you're going through, this is happening with me, right? You guys, with my brother who's very sick. My kids are old enough that they are going to deal with loss at a younger age than I ever did, and I didn't have to. My grandparents passed when I was older. A few years ago, my grandfather passed when I was 18 or 19, I want to say. That was one of the hardest, but that was the first time I ever really had to deal with it, and I was fairly old, and it was hard then, and I couldn't imagine dealing with this when you're 8, 9, 10, and it's someone much younger. So we, and my wife and I, we had been involved in a church through their nursery school, and I started to really look to this because my kids were really looking to this, and they were asking a lot of questions, and I began to kind of refine my faith. And that's and a lot of that is due to that. And they would be asking me questions, and I don't know the answers because I know the basic Bible stories, but but even you, I was like, I actually don't know. And to be honest, a lot of my things that turned me away from religion were things I saw on TV, the politics of it, the things that people argue about over politics. You guys all know what I'm talking about, right? That the stuff that kind of gives you the ick. The more you learn and educate yourself and actually read the scripture, you realize that a lot of that is not what it's about. I think there's like this politicized religion that people get involved in, and I didn't want anything to do that. And then you take your own journey and you decide, I'm going to read this stuff for myself and figure out what I believe. And I'm going to talk to my pastor. And I happen to find a church that we really like. And so that was another big piece, and help my kids, right? They're asking me questions. So I'm using ChatGPT, or I'm using Claude to kind of unwind this. I actually don't know what that means. And if you've ever read a King James Bible, it's a little hard, so I'm going through. And then finally I built an app. I said, you know what? I got to build an app because I wanted to read more. Reading the Bible cover to cover, I found to be very difficult. And I thought, what if I journaled about what's going on in my life, and then Claude could recommend the passage that kind of gives some wisdom to this, to these thoughts. So that was the start. Then I'd read the passage. I said, well, what if I could like click on these passages and ask questions and really kind of learn? And it really is amazing because it goes into the history of what was going on at that time. It goes into the theology of it. It goes into what some of the different sects and different brands of Christianity might believe, because I need that. I'm that kind of, I like to kind of understand the full philosophy. For some people, they're not as into that. I really like the facts and help me through that. And so from this, I've been using it with my kids. It's been helping me kind of explain this in a much more constructive way. And I will say that in a way that we don't, that if you've been kind of in this like turned off by the politics of it all, this is very far removed from that, which I really appreciate.
It's also like as much of a dose as you want, right? Like you can go as deep in this journey as you want. We're also in like an unprecedented time, which is the ability to have used LLMs to facilitate the responses to these curiosities. The first time in human history that you're able to do this. It has the answers, it has speculations, but you're the conductor of the conversation.
Dude, and I have 3 different translations too. So I can read it like the King James Version or the World English Version side by side. You can even say like, hey, it'll go into like the Hebrew words and how there may be different translations based on how the word was used at that time, and things that you just wouldn't get unless you were actually taking a proper Bible study, and you'd be going through it much slower, and you'd be going, this is a very personalized order. It's trying to take you through it based on what you're going through in your life, which, ideally you'll get through all of it. And then if you're, like I said, you're with your kids, we're doing the things for Holy Communion, they're asking me questions. Now I have really good answers for these things, which is pretty awesome.
I find it really interesting. It's not like, you and me are not particularly religious. I think you are finding new path to it, and I think that is normal. Like with kids, and there's just exposure, and it's a reconnection with what you went through in your childhood, what I went through in my childhood, same but different. What I find really interesting is, what have we built? 200 applications in the last 10 years. Like, why all of a sudden, same day? It was literally same day, separate thoughts that we both came together and we were like, what, we should build something for that. And you and I were always looking for like the right thing to build. It's not really about money, it's about impact. I'm looking for something that is at humanity's scale, and I don't have a medical problem to solve. We have lots of clients that have had medical problems in their brains that they wanted to make a business out of and solve. And while we have some of those things, that wasn't the calling. I just find it so fucking divine, dude. Like, just so weird. I don't know how to explain it other than to just like go for it. But like, why was it this? Why are we not catching the signal on the other business tools that have very clear market value? We've created some incredible business tooling, especially for us personally on like SaaS killers and whatever. Like, could it be this? Had to go through all of that to get to this? I don't know.
Well, I don't really know. Like, for me, this goes to this thing that I used to call scratch your own itch validation. Like, a lot of times people search for the landing page.
Done that many times.
I built this for me. Like, if nobody uses it, nobody uses it. Like, it's not really about that. And you and I even just talked about it, where it's really going to be
pay what you want,
effectively given away. It's
totally
pay what you want, because I believe in the messaging. I believe in the pursuit. I believe it'll benefit people's lives. It's benefited my life. So like, that's the thing, like finding my way through this journey, but this was necessary. I think that for me, this was a necessary piece of the journey. And I think it was something that I realized that I could not really form a judgment or give something a true chance without going through this. And my wife and I both experienced different like styles of religion than we are now. Like I was raised Catholic. She was raised in a non-denominational setting. And like, there was a lot of, there's like a lot of fear that's used in some of those settings. There were a lot of things that we had not seen. And then until we had found our way back together, that was that was really very important. And I think it's very important to kind of find your own way. And I feel like in some weird, obviously, like we ended up joining a different church. We're Lutheran now. I love this. it's almost Protestant in the message where, hey, you find your way. Like, you have the tools. This does not have to be told to you by a central authority. This book is for you. And I was telling you this before, right? It's very similar to the message of grace that we're taught to. This is given to you. This is not something that you have to choose. It's given. And so it's there for you. Yeah, I personally found that I needed to know more. I was very curious about it. I think I had always been very curious about it too. I just had never I think it was, before LLMs, it was also just a real struggle to kind of make your way through some of these things, because you'd be having questions and you weren't exactly understanding what you were reading. And I think that the history is a really important piece of it for a lot of us. And then the other side of this too, we talked about this the other day. I think the more science you learn brings you back to God, because you're like, wait a minute, like this is amazing. This is absolutely incredible. Like, some people look around and they just see an accident and they're just like okay with that justification. And the more I learned, the more I thought it's just too ordered to be all accidental. And I think when you're also confronted as you are with this and loss in a sort of memento mori kind of sense, right? And you feel connected to these people who were once here, and you feel there is some kind of a connection between all of us that kind of transcends this space and time that we're living through. So this is the out of left field kind of build for us. Again, very private. Now it's very public because we did it. I was like, listen, I'm using. I was like, I'll put it out there for other people to use because I think it's good. And so I encourage you to use it when you're struggling too, because it's not a sometimes the answers to your struggle you're not going to find it in information. You're not going to, you may not even find it from within. So it's helpful.
Most of these things you can't make sense of. It's not really the point. It's a learn how to continue on. You can't make sense of any of these things. None of the stuff that we're talking about has any explanation. There's no reason why. But it's about how can I continue to persist? You ask like a what is the point question? What's the meaning of all of this type of a question? There's only really one way to get to what your answer is for that question. It's really only one way to continue to pursue day over day and not kind of lose your shit constantly, because this is like it's a tough existence. And I think it relates a lot back to what we talk about a lot, which is entrepreneurship in general. Like, some days you got to wake up and you're in a full-on whiteout at 16,000. You're uncertain.
Hair standing on end, dude. Oh my God.
Hair standing on end. And you're dude, I have this famous photo right here. Nobody ever sees it because I'm sitting in front of it. I would say 30 minutes before this photo was taken, I watched a man die. Literally watched a man die on Elbrus. He went into cardiac arrest. Must have been some altitude sickness or some type of something. Myocardial infarction. Full on cardiac arrest, was getting CPR like crazy. I watched a man die 30 minutes before I stood on top of the world and was convinced that my great-grandmother was standing right next to me, embracing me in her warm hug. Like, why wasn't that me? Why wasn't that somebody on my team? It was somebody else's team. Like, just before you stand on top of the world, you are reminded about the thin lining.
Frailty.
The frailty.
Yeah.
Frailty,
dude.
So it's at
reality.
At every step. It's every step of the way. And it doesn't have to be as radical and as final as actual death. It could be very simple. It could just be like the death of an idea. A dream that you once had is not going to be possible for today. That's all data. That's valuable to me. Tough.
I will not lie to you. It is hard, like coping with that question. Why bad things happen to good people. I don't have an answer yet. Listen, the Bible discusses this at length in many places. It's very, very hard. It's probably one of the hardest things to cope with on the journey. And so I'm not going to lie, that's a struggle that I'm working through. That's especially because of what's going on in my life and what you're going through right now. And having nothing to do with entrepreneurship. It's a hard question to wrestle with, but it's one of those questions that I don't want to have to wrestle with alone.
Definitely an anomaly tougher episode for us to have put out there was kind of totally on a whim. I'm happy with where we went. But dude, I wish you the wind at your back.
Same for you, man.
Thanks, man. See you later.